Welcome to the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit. These weekly podcasts feature expository messages delivered to edify the soul. Now let's join Pastor Dave as he presents this week's message.
All right, if you want to take your Bible, join me in Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 14. 1 Samuel chapter 14. We're going to be reading today verse 16. So 1 Samuel chapter 14, verses 1 through 16. And I'm going to entitle the message today, Jonathan Sneaks Away. So we're going to look at Jonathan today. He sneaks away. He does something wonderful when he sneaks away, but we'll examine that as we go through the... Now it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan and the son of Saul said unto the young man that bare his armor, Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. And Saul tarried in the uttermost part of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. And the people that were with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, the son of Ahituv, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, wearing the ephod. And the people knew not that Jonathan was gone. And between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over unto the Philistines' garrison, there was a sharp rock on the one side and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other Sina. The forefront of the one was situate northward over against Michmash, and the other southward over against Gibeah. And Jonathan said to the young man that bare his armor, Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. And his armor-bearer said unto him, Do all that is in thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Then said Jonathan, Behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. And if they say unto us, Tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place and will not go up unto them. But if they say, Come up unto us, then we will go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand, and this shall be a sign unto us. And both of them discovered themselves unto the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, Behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they hid themselves. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor-bearer and said, Come up to us, and we will show you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor-bearer, Come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and upon his feet, and his armor-bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer slew after him. And that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor-bearer made was about 20 men, within as it were a half acre of land, which a yoke of oxen might plow. And there was trembling in the host, in the field, and among all the people, the garrison and the earth quaked. And they also trembled, the spoilers, they also trembled, and the earth quaked. So it was a very great trembling. And the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. You'll notice beginning there in verse 1, verses 1 and 2, we have this distinction between Jonathan and his father Saul. It says there in verse 1, It came to pass upon a day that Jonathan the son of Saul said unto the young man that bare his armor, Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side, but he told not his father. That's verse 1. So we have Jonathan, and you can just imagine, I think, these two young men. And they're sitting there, they're probably buddies, and they're sitting there somewhere in Gibeah. Dad's over here under the pomegranate tree, and these two are, off by themselves. And maybe they've got their backs to Dad, and they're looking northward at Michmash. And they're thinking, and they're talking, and they're, joking probably. And then suddenly the Spirit of the Lord, I think, touched Jonathan, and he looked over there, and he said, well, you know what? He said, let's go over there. Let's go over to the Philistines' garrison that's on the other side. And it says right there at the end of that verse, that he didn't tell his father. Yeah, and he wasn't going to tell his father, and then because he knew that, number one, he wouldn't be missed, because everybody's focused on Dad. He's the king. He's got 600 men around him, and Jonathan and his armor bearer, they're probably, on the outside of that group, because he's just the crown prince. That's all. Nobody's paying any attention to him. Everybody wants to know what Saul's getting ready to do. And so he says to his armor bearer, let's go over that. Let's go over there to the Philistines' garrison that's on the other side of the draw. And what an adventure that we can engage in when we know that the Lord is with us. And they did. They knew the Lord was with them. And I think that's why these two, probably, as I said, sitting there together in the back of the room, as it were, and maybe Ahiah is preaching, the priest that's there, and they were passing notes and whispering to one another and looking over there at that garrison, and then suddenly Jonathan says, "You know what? Let's have an adventure. Let's just go over there." Of course, he's not going to tell Dad, because Dad would probably try to restrain him from going. Dad was afraid. Everybody else was afraid. He knew the Lord could do a work if only somebody believed enough to go. If only somebody believed enough to go. And Jonathan said, as he looked over that draw across the way and saw that garrison, and he thought, let's go. Let's just go over there, see what the Lord might do. Now you notice in verse 2, we find out about Saul. It says he tarried in the uttermost part of Gibeah, so he's as far away from the garrison of the Philistines as he could get. Jonathan wants to go over to the garrison of the Philistines. Saul wants to be as far from that as possible, but he doesn't want to look scared. So he's as far away as he can get and still be in Gibeah. So he's on the uttermost part of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree. So he's in the shade. He's probably seated there. It's in Migron. That's the place. And the people that were with him were about 600 men. Now, we found out about the 600 men last time, remember? I know it's been a while now. 3 weeks ago, whenever I preached that sermon about the 600 that were left. That was Saul's Gideon moment, and he passed it by. Well, the 600 are still with him, and he's still there in Gibeah, but he's not looking over there to that garrison of the Philistines because he's afraid. And everybody else is afraid too. Everyone, that is, except for Jonathan. So the people that were with him, 600 men, the priest is with him. Now, this is the son. This priest has got a good lineage. Notice it there in verse 3. He's the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas. So Phinehas had some children before he died. You remember Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli that were killed. They were not good men. They had children. One of those children had a son, and this guy, Ahiah, is the son of Ichabod's brother. So this is the grandson of Phinehas. This is the great-grandson of Eli. And you notice how it describes him, the Lord's priest in Shiloh wearing an ephod. So this is the last one to wear an ephod. But Ahiah is there. He's the great-grandson of this failed family of Eli. He's at Saul's side. This is really, I think, a dark shade upon the government of Saul. Saul had a problem with surrounding himself with shady characters. If going ahead in the story, we run into a fellow by the name of Doeg the Edomite. And he's one notable example of some shady people that Saul surrounded himself with. Be careful about who you invite into your plans. Ahiah probably shouldn't have been there. Doeg certainly shouldn't have been there. There are others in Saul's life that shouldn't be there, but Saul apparently has a problem with that. And then you'll notice in verse 2, we sort of have a little repeat. It says, the people knew not that Jonathan was gone. Now, the verb in verse 1 is told. No one told Saul that Jonathan was gone. Here, it's to know. The people didn't know that Jonathan was gone. So the crown prince and his armor bearer leave, and nobody knows it. Nobody's watching. Nobody is caring for these two men. Everybody's focused on something else. They're focused on their fear. They're focused on this king who's not much of a king, and they're focused on whatever else is going on under that pomegranate tree. But they don't notice when the crown prince sneaks away. Nobody said anything about it. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if it's that nobody knew that they were gone or that nobody wanted to tell Saul that they were gone. Because if they had told Saul that they were gone, that would have been a mess. And so let me just go back to my point. We have this division between Saul, who's afraid and as far away as he can get without losing face, and Jonathan, who says, you know what, let's just go over there. Just me and you. Goes over with his armor bearer. I have read some very interesting translations of that word armor bearer. It's actually in Hebrew, it's two words. It means the one who bears up the weapons. The one who bears up his weapons. So this guy probably has his armor, Jonathan's, so that he could give it to his master. He also is probably carrying Jonathan's sword. And if Jonathan has a bow and an arrow, which we know Jonathan used, he's probably got all of that with him. So he's the one who's encumbered so that Jonathan is free to move. And we get to it in just a moment. The heart of this young man is outstanding. So let's look on here to, but anyway, I'm going to lose my point. It's two Hebrew words to bear the armor or to bear the weapons. And so many translations, just because they're different, they're new translations and they want to be different, they'll string a bunch of words together. The young man who is bearing the weapons of Jonathan. Well, why can't you just squeeze that down into armor bearer? Why do you have to string it all out like that? So many interesting translations for this. I read, what was it? I think it was the Everyday Bible. It calls him the officer, which is okay, I guess, but I think it's awkward and really doesn't tell us what he's doing. We need to know what he's doing, and he's the one that's got the burden. He's making sure that Jonathan is able to move quickly. So here we go. Notice the preparation of their heart. They leave, and now it says in verse 4, between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistines' garrison, there was a sharp rock on one side and a sharp rock on the other. And the name of one was Bozez, and the name of the other was Sina. The forefront of one was situate north toward Michmash, the other southward over Gibeah. So they're going down into the ravine and then up the other side, because Michmash is on the other side of the ring. You've got Gibeah over here, and then you've got this drain. That's really what it is. It just drains from the Judean highlands down into the Jordan Valley. And so there's this drain that's been cut out by the water. They're going down into the drain and then up the other side. And then on the other side at Michmash, Michmash was this wonderfully, naturally fortified area. There were stones all around and made a perfect fortress, natural fortress. Well, two of these stones they had given names to. One was Bozez and one was Sina, and they were situated north and south. So one stuck out over the drain and one stuck out over Michmash. So they were like this. And the one that stuck out over and was pointing south toward Gibeah was called Sina, which means thorny. That's the southernmost stone. And the other one was called cut off. That's Bozez, and that was situate this way towards Michmash. I'd hate to see a stone named Thorny, wouldn't you? Especially if it was the one that was over top of me when I was trying to climb up a steep incline. That would be very difficult to handle. So they have these stones. There's always difficulty when it comes to doing God's will. You know that? The devil will always put the thorny stone in your way. It's never easy. It is never easy. The way is always difficult because it always demands faith. If you see the stone thorny in your way and you don't have faith enough to go up to the garrison of the Philistines, you know what you're going to do? You're going to turn around and go back home. Because Thorny's there. And I'm not going to try to climb up over Thorny. I might get hurt. Something else might happen. I might slip and fall. And you don't want to slip and fall on Thorny. And after Thorny, I got to go past Cutoff. And that's a big stone too. And so he's got all of this in his way, and still it doesn't deter his faith. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot expect our walk with Christ to be easy. Thorny is always going to be there. Cutoff is always going to be behind him. They're always going to be over top of us, telling us, go back, go home. Which is why Michmash was such a perfect place for an encampment. Perfect place for an encampment. Nobody's going to climb up. They're probably not even watching that little place. They're probably not even concerned about somebody trying to get up through there. Because look at it. Maybe one man at a time, which apparently is exactly how you do it, one man at a time. And you're, as we'll find out here in just a moment, they're climbing up hand over foot. So the way is difficult, but the confession is great. Notice verse 6. Jonathan said to the young man that bears armor, come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. Now notice that in 14:1 it was the garrison of the Philistines. Now it's the uncircumcised. What does this tell us? Well, this is the same language that David used when he mocked Goliath. He called him the uncircumcised. This uncircumcised. Why does this uncircumcised mock the armies of the living God? This is covenant language. The Philistines have no right to be where they are. They have no right to bespoil the people of Israel. They have no warrant to have a garrison at Michmash because God never gave them that right. You see, we have two people groups in this story that have forgotten who they are. Number one, Israel forgot it completely who they were, that they were under the protection and blessing of God. They completely forgot that. And the Philistines completely forgot the fact that every time they've engaged Israel in their past, they have been destroyed because they have no warrant to be in Israel. They have been beaten back time and again, and now they've just forgotten all about it because they have 300,000 million, trillion, zillion men in the field and 30,000 chariots, and they think that they can be world beaters. It doesn't matter. Put anybody in the field and we'll tear them up. They forgot they don't belong there. Israel forgot that they do belong there. And they're so afraid, and they shouldn't be afraid, because they're the covenant people. And Jonathan hasn't forgotten that. And he says, these uncircumcised. He goes straight to the covenant. This is what everything depends on. They have no right to be there. Now notice what else he says. There in verse 4. Where am I? Verse 6? Yes, verse 6. It may be that the Lord will work for us. Why? Why may it be that way? And I love the way the King James translates this. I will recommend the King James translation of this over any other translation because the word there in the Hebrew is work. God will do a work. That's what Jonathan says. It will be that the Lord will do a work for us. Why does he say that? Because the Philistines are outside of their boundaries. They're outside of their warrant. They mock the people of God. They've placed Jonathan and his friend in the position of victory simply because they're there in Michmash. That's it. And so Jonathan says, the Lord will work for us. Okay, Jonathan, the Lord will work for us, but there's two. It's you and your armor bearer. There's just two of you. And then he says this, there in 6. For there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. I love that. Don't you? There is no restraint. And the Hebrew here, is exactly as King James translates it, restraint. There's nothing holding the Lord back. Nothing. It's not a matter of strength. Gideon proved that. What is it, ladies and gentlemen, that restrains the Lord? Does anything? Can he not do anything that he wills? In this case, Jonathan knew that he was in a good standing. Because number one, the uncircumcised are in a place they shouldn't be. And number two, he knows that the Lord can save. He doesn't have to, nothing will restrain him from saving. He saves because that's what he loves to do, is save. He loves to deliver his people. And so he's got two immutable things on his side. Number one, he's a part of the covenant people of God. And number two, God loves to save and deliver his own. It doesn't matter if it's by few or by many. You know, I think that applies to us as well as Creek Road Baptist Church. You look around us now. We're a few. Karen just gave me this past week our ACP report. Now that's kind of inside baseball talk. Karen and I are probably the only ones in the world who know anything about ACP here at church, and that's a good thing. You don't need to know. But the ACP report is the statistics report that the Southern Baptists require every church to produce every year. And so the ACP report goes from July of one year to June of the next year. And one of the things that we do, Karen takes care of the financial records, and she takes care of the Sunday school records, and then I track worship attendance. And so as I filled out the ACP report this past week, I put the number 29. That was our average attendance last year for Creek Road Baptist Church, 29. Now you look at that and you can say, it's kind of depressing, 29 people. But honestly, I think we're in a good spot, because it doesn't matter to the Lord whether it's many or few. What's difficult for us is listening to all the voices that tell us that we're not well, that it's not good, that we need to have a bunch. And all the churches that are packing out their sanctuaries and celebrating 2 and 3 services or 2 and 3 campuses, there are all the champions now in the Southern Baptist Convention, but nobody wants to talk about the little churches, the ones with 29 attendees on a Sunday morning. And so we look at our numbers and we look at what everybody else is saying and we say, oh, it must be bad. But I want to propose to you this morning that that's exactly what Saul was saying. He was over there on the furthest part of Gibeah and he was about to give up because he only had 600 men. And he's saying, oh, it's bad. And he's listening to the Philistines brag about their countless numbers in the field and their 30,000 chariots. Well, that's okay, I guess, if numbers is all you're counting. But that's not what the Lord counts. He's not counting numbers. And do you know, even though we have such a small group, our finances are outstanding. The Lord has us here doing a work for a reason. Let's not be discouraged about that. Yeah, we could have more, and yeah, we could do more to reach more. But ladies and gentlemen, 29 people, I think we're in a pretty good spot, because I think this is where the Lord takes a small group to do a great thing, and he does that for his own glory. Let us not be discouraged. Let us not give up. Let us not peel back. It's not time for that. I think what it's time for is to look over to the garrison of the Philistines and say, why don't we just go over there and see what the Lord will do? Because he'll work for us. There's no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few, unless you're looking at what everybody else is saying. Because if you look at what everybody else is saying and what's popular and chic and cool now, and I've been here 23 years and I've been in pulpits for almost 30 years now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. There's always going to be the chic and the cool thing in church work. If you listen to that, and you look at what we have, you'll say, well, there's really no reason for Creek Road to exist. But God says something completely different. He says, I've just about got Creek Road where I want them, so that I can be glorified in the great work that I'm about to do. Because there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. He can do anything that he wants. And in this case, Jonathan knew that he was in a good way. So, verse 7, his armor bearer speaks up. Still, we don't know this boy's name. Don't know his name, but we know he's doing a good job. Carrying the armor, carrying the weapons, carrying the bow, carrying the spear, carrying the arrows, carrying the javelin. He's carrying probably supplies. He looks like a pack mule. He's just loaded down with stuff, and he's trodden behind his prince. And he says to Jonathan, after Jonathan makes his wonderful confession of faith, his armor bearer says to him, do all that's in your heart. Turn you. Behold, I am with you according to your heart. Doesn't matter. The unity here is just outstanding. The unity of brethren is demonstrated here in such a marvelous way. Here is a plan based on dynamic faith, and two men are of one heart about this particular plan. Jonathan's faith is in the Lord, and it's contagious, and his armor bearer says, yep, you go, wherever you go, I go, and we'll do whatever's in your heart. That's the plan. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is our problem at Creek Road Baptist Church. We lack unity. We all have plans, and we all want to do something great for the Lord, but when it comes to unity, we have something else going on. What would have happened if his armor bearer had said to him, do all that's in thy heart, but wait a minute, let me check my calendar. I got to make sure that don't have any other plans. Because if I have any other plans, or I don't happen to feel good on that day, or perhaps, I don't know, I'm not sure that this is what the Lord wants us to do. If he had said that, they would never have attacked or sacked the Philistines' garrison, because there would be no unity. So the wonderful faith of Jonathan is a great confession, and all that he's done here is wonderful, but when it comes to unity, you got to have it. And so do we as a people, as a church. We need to be united. Do all that is in thy heart. Turn thee. Behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. And then said Jonathan, behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. And if they say unto us, tarry until we come to you, then we will stand in our place, and will not go up to them. But if they say thus, come up unto us, then we shall go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand. And this shall be a sign unto us. So, here's the plan. They have their confession of faith. They have unity. They have a plan. Jonathan says, this is what we're going to do. If they say one thing, condition number one, wait till we come to you. Well, we're just going to stand there because we're not going to go up. But if they say, come up to us, then we know the Lord has delivered them into our hand. That's condition number two. That'll be our sign. And then we'll just go up. And so they've got a plan. They've got a good confession. They've got unity of brethren. And they have a plan to go forward. But what if they never went over there? What if they had all this planned out? They had said all these words to one another, and then they just sat there, and they just looked over there at that garrison. Nothing would have happened. So then we have them going over. Notice chapter 14, verse 11. Both of them discovered themselves under the garrison of the Philistines. I still contend that the Philistines are not watching that little area there that comes up off the draw. They don't even think anybody's going to try to come up that way because it's so difficult. And so I think probably Jonathan and his armor bearer standing down there going, hoo-hoo, hey guys, we're down here. Come get us. Look at here, we've got swords and we've got shields. Ha-ha. And they're probably doing a little dance down there until somebody in the Philistine garrison says, oh, okay, there they are. So they put the plan into action. They go down, they come up the other side, and they yell up at the Philistine garrison, hey, we're here. And you notice that what the Philistines say there in verse 11. The Philistines say, behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they had hid themselves. Now look, this is fair. This is mockery, but it's fair because they had hidden themselves. They were hiding. Saul was hiding. He was in the hinder part of Gibeah. Some had even gone over to the land of Gad and gone to the land of Gilead. They'd gone as far away from the fight as they could get. So the Philistines have a right to say this. Behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they had hidden themselves. And condition 2 then is met. You notice they say to them, the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor and said, come up to us and we will show you a thing. I love that, don't you? We will show you. You know exactly what they mean, right? And the Hebrew here is very interesting too. It means we're going to teach you a lesson. We're going to teach you something. So come up here, we'll teach you something. And so Jonathan looks at his armor bearer and he says, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of not us, but who? Israel. Because Jonathan has a sense that this is going to be a victory, not for him and not for his armor bearer, but for the entire nation. So he has this premonition because the Philistines have no right to be there. And Israel has no right to be afraid. And so if someone breaks through the fear and walks onto the battlefield, just like little David did, if somebody's going to do that with faith in their heart, God is going to take the battle and turn it in such a way as to give him the glory, because Saul hasn't planned anything beautiful to win a battle. Nothing. Jonathan and his armor bearer go over there, and he says, come up, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. It's no longer our hand, but faith has revealed something more. This will lead to the deliverance of a nation. Verse 13, Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet. So you see how steep it is. They're doing this. They're climbing through thorny and past broken, and they're going to get up into the camp area, and they're doing it on their hands and on their feet. Now, if you are standing on top of a hill and somebody's climbing up the hill, who has the advantage? The guy on the top. He has the advantage, because the guy climbing up with his hands and his feet, he can't protect himself. He's got to hold on to the thorny rock. He's got to climb past all the obstructions just to get up to where the defender is. The defender has the advantage, but you notice that it says that Jonathan climbed up on his hands and his feet, and his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan. It's almost like not even a shot was fired from the top. They just didn't even think that two guys posed a threat. Let them come up here. Let them climb up. And as soon as they get up, Jonathan reaches back for his sword, pulls it out, and here they go. They go flying. Philistines everywhere. They fell before Jonathan. And it says his armor bearer slew after him. So Jonathan is killing. His armor bearer is killing men. And you'll notice there in verse 14 it says, there's a notable victory. It says the first slaughter, this is the first slaughter that Jonathan and his armor bearer made. It was about 20 men within, as it were, a half acre of land which a yoke of oxen might plow. Now this plot, 20 acres or a half acre, make for a good-sized garden. You just think about a half acre of land, maybe you've got a garden on it, and how big that is. You put 22 men in that space in a fight. That's pretty tight quarters. So the first slaughter that Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men. So this is a notable victory. The two men take on 20. But ladies and gentlemen, for two men to take on 20 in a small space is miraculous. But what is the defeat of 20 men compared to the numberless thousands on the field of battle below Michmash? It doesn't really, does it? I mean, 20 men, they can get rid of 5 times 20, and still it doesn't matter, because Israel only has 600. But what happens here is the faith of Jonathan and his armor bearer cause a reaction. There's a reaction that takes place. what Jonathan unleashed was greater than the 20 men that his faith saw defeating. Notice verse 15. There was a trembling in the host, in the field, and among all the people. The garrison, the spoilers, they also trembled. The earth even shook, so that it was a very great trembling. You see what the faith of two men can do? The faith of two men caused a great trembling. And you know, nobody knew that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone until the trembling started. Now you look down at verse 16, and it says, the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. So suddenly everything starts to shake, the ground starts to shake, and they look out, and they see that the multitude is just, they're destroying one another, they're just melting away. They're running, they're fighting, they're yelling, there's just chaos in the camp of the Philistines. The faith of two men caused a great trembling. Beware of what your faith can unleash. Or maybe I should say, look forward to what your faith can unleash. The Lord came and fought for Israel, not because the king had great faith, but because the two boys who were in the back of the room had simple faith in the revealed word of God. Uncircumcised Philistines on Israel's land, they don't belong there. God has kept us and will keep us. Nothing will restrain him from deliverance. And so they went over. They revealed themselves, and the word of God was revealed to all. So in conclusion, the victory took place. This was Jonathan's Gideon moment. Saul had his and passed it by. Jonathan had his with even fewer men. And look what the Lord did. How do you get a multitude of unnumbered thousands to melt away? You say to your armor bearer, come, let's go over there and see what the Lord will do.
Jesus will meet you.
Thanks for listening to this week's message. Please join us again next time for another installment of the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit.